In the year 2050, I will be 56 years old. Yet, right now, the average age of this 52nd Parliament is 49 years old. Okay, Boomer. Current political institutions have proven themselves incompetent of thinking outside of a short political term.
I cringe every time I watch this video. Not because I'm insulted by her dig, but because I understand the meaning behind it. The insinuation from this millennial is that baby boomers are old and out of touch. And I think, and I know, it's no wonder that we boomers, we've historically found it so challenging to manage someone in this age category. They don't understand us, and we don't understand them. And what I've learned from managing hundreds of people throughout my career is that if you want to become a great manager, if you want to get the most from an employee, and I mean at any age, it always starts with making an effort to learn about them. So in this video, I'll share what research says about millennials, also known as Gen Y. I'll give you a few tips that are going to help you become better at managing this dynamic age group. And while we're at it, I'll include the same information about Gen X's. That's the generation between boomers and millennials. Combined, these two generations dominate the workforce. And chances are a majority of the people you manage, the people who work for you, they're a combination of both. Well, that's all up next right here on Over 50 TV. Hello everybody, welcome back to Over 50 TV. My name is Lou Reyes, and today I'm going to offer up some tips to help you manage people younger than yourself. First, what I want to do is I'm going to start at ground level. I've started at the basics, so let's talk about you. What I know is before you can effectively manage someone else, especially somebody who's younger than yourself, it's important to know and understand you and understand why you have certain expectations and beliefs. We shouldn't assume people around us, they see, think, hear, and process information like us. If we're a hard-charging, our job is everything baby boomer, why? Expecting those traits in someone younger, it's a recipe for disappointment and failure. So the question is, why do you have those expectations, those high expectations? Well, research shows that in general, baby boomers define themselves by their job. They're motivated by promotions, professional development, and having their expertise valued and acknowledged. Also says that boomers like communicating face-to-face, and sometimes, I know this, we do it in long, drawn-out conversations. Now, if any of this sounds like you and it works for you, well, that's great. But don't assume that younger people are motivated like you, learn like you, or even communicate like you. Nothing, and I mean nothing, can be further from the truth. When younger workers, when they don't live up to our expectations, we can become frustrated, and sometimes we even marginalize them, or worse, we lower our expectations, and then we accept less. Younger employees, they don't walk around with their eyes shut. They see what we're doing, and when they see or don't see a future for themselves, a future at our company, more often than not, they quit. And then what happens is we have to start all over again. So understanding general traits of our younger colleagues, that'll help you to become a better manager. I'll start with Gen X. They are typically between 40 to 55 years old. Generally, they're motivated by money and to a lesser degree work. They learn visually, and they love using illustrations and programs like PowerPoint as communication tools. Gen Xers, they're self-sufficient and resourceful. It's a trait that's certainly at least partially attributed to having parents who were at work when they got home from school. The term latchkey kids, that was coined to describe this, what I'll call a phenomena. Gen X's, they value freedom and responsibility, and they tend to perform better under minimal supervision. They also strive to have a healthy balance between work and personal time. And because they lived through a very difficult economic time, a period in the 1980s.
And people worried about the gas prices and food prices. We're in an unhealthy market.
By no means, again, are we at a trading bottom. Okay, the consumer's strangled. They're watching their housing prices go lower. They're watching their 401ks get diminished. They're spending higher prices on everything in their lives. So we're in a bad environment.
They're less committed to employers They're less committed than their baby boomer parents were. Gen Xers are the first generation to grow up with computers. They're comfortable with this technology, and for the most part, they're able to learn and adapt to new programs with what I would just say relative ease. In this panel, I'm going to summarize 3 general traits every employer should know about managing a Gen Xer. So here we have Gen X. On this panel, we show that they're born between 1965 and 1989. We've got 3 key points when it comes to working with or managing a Gen X. And I've broken it down into 3 areas. Number 1 is driver, which really is what motivates them. Number 2, how they learn. And number 3, you can see it says how they communicate. So let's look at number 1. Number 1, the driver. They strive for work-life balance. They're not enamored by public recognition, and they find that freedom and time off are the best rewards. In all the research that I've done, all the experience I've had with working with a Gen X, I find this to be very, very true. Unlike a boomer who uses work or whose work is their life, it's not the same with the Gen X. They do want and strive for work-life balance. So let's look at number 2, how they learn. They process information visually. They love pictures, whiteboards, and PowerPoint presentations. And I think what we see is, and which if we can recall when I said earlier that this is the latchkey generation, when they got home from school, as kids, they get home from school, and what happens is they see on the refrigerator a list that their parent, their mom, or their dad left for them, a list that says this is what you need to do, and the list is usually categorized or numeric, and they follow that list. So it's pretty easy to understand. It's simple to see that when it comes to learning, they love pictures, they love whiteboards, and of course PowerPoint presentations. Number 3, how they communicate. And again, I want to stress that this is all general information. This is a summary. So when I say this, I'm hoping that I won't get a response or a note from someone who says, "Oh, how do you put these people or Gen X in a category?" Well, this is just based off research, and it's based again off some of the experiences that I've had. But when it says to communicate, let's talk about this. Meetings should only be for issues that really require face-to-face communication. Gen X, they use email as a go-to communication tool and use straight talk with them. And what I've seen many times, and especially, and I'll counter this by saying boomers, as a baby boomer, and as somebody who's worked with many, many baby boomers, what I see is that we like to talk a lot. And it's the exact opposite of what we see with a Gen X. So here I've given you 3 points, 3 key points. What's driver, which is a motivator, what motivates them, how they learn, and how they communicate. So now what I'll do is I'll give you some tips on how to manage a millennial, or what we call Gen Y. Now this group, as we know, they make up half the workforce. So what we also know is understanding them. It's really a necessity, and it's a necessity for every manager. So I'm going to summarize, I'll give you some key facts, some key pointers about millennials. Number 1, what we know is it's important to build trust with a millennial. It's like anyone else, anybody else that's working for you. You want them to trust you and believe in you. It's especially important to a millennial. Number 2, keep them challenged. We all want to be challenged. We all want to know that we have an opportunity to grow and advance. It's especially important to millennials, and what we've seen is it's more important to them than money. Another thing is they get bored easily, just like any of us. You want to keep them engaged. You want to keep them longer at your company. Research shows that on average, they quit a job after just 2.6 years. So keeping them engaged, keeping them challenged, keeping them at your company is going to be important. Another key item, something that's important to a millennial, more important to them than boomers, is they want flexibility in their work schedule. A 9 to 5, it doesn't work for them. So if you want to keep them, it would be prudent, it would be smart to offer a flexible work schedule. How you determine that, that's up to you. But one thing is you could allow them to work remotely. Now, millennials, another item, something that we hear all the time is they're accustomed to receiving external praise. So give them regular positive feedback. One of the studies that I read recently says 60% of millennials want praise at least once a day. So if they deserve it, give it to them. Millennials, they also want to work for a company, and you've probably heard this. You've probably heard this many times. They want to work for a company whose values align with their own. Now, more than one half of all millennials say, in research, they say they'd consider leaving a company if their values don't match up. So it's important for you when you're talking to a millennial, when you hire them, to make sure that your values match. Now, what I've done is I've included a panel here, a panel that has 3 general traits that I believe every employer should know about managing a millennial. And let's go over that panel right now. So let's look at this panel, Gen Y millennials. People born between 1981 and 1996. I've broken it down as the previous panel. I broke it down into 3 categories. I've got driver, how they learn, and how they communicate. And these are general. What I stressed earlier is basically it's in general information. It's based on research, and it's based on experience. I've definitely seen all 3 of these when it comes to working with Gen Y. Number 1, millennials are often seen as more idealistic and more motivated by purpose than a paycheck. Absolutely, positively something that I've seen, and I've read numerous articles that back this up. I'm sure if you work with Gen Y, you have also seen this to be true. They're more motivated by purpose than a paycheck. Number 2, how they learn. This is wise information, I believe, because it'll help you to, when you're working with a millennial and when you're showing them or explaining what you need to know. I think this paragraph is really one of the key things that you want to keep in your memory bank. It says, give millennials the option to learn at their pace by making the information accessible on demand. They prefer bite-sized pieces of info, short lessons. And the reference for this, I've listed the reference here. It says Shift Disruptive Learning. It's from a 2019 page or a study. I'm going to include a link to this complete study, to this information in the information box in the video when you can see that. I think this is a very, very important to know. And for any manager, especially if you are an older manager, a baby boomer, and you're working with a millennial and you want to show them what you need to have done. Number 3, how they communicate. Keep it brief but meaningful. The more concise your own message, the more likely they are to relate to or appreciate what you say. Most millennials prefer to receive a detailed plan or instruction before jumping into a project. Present everything they need to know to do the job well, but skip flowery prose. Previously, I mentioned 2 things. I mentioned that in terms of getting bored easily, that is obvious here. Right here it says here, the more likely they are to relate or appreciate what you say if you keep the message concise. Obviously, that's going to be important, and that does relate to the ability to keep them engaged. And as I mentioned about the boredom, most millennials prefer to receive a detailed plan or instruction before jumping into a project. Skip the flowery prose. Boomers, we talk, and we like to talk a lot. Sometimes I think we'd like to hear ourselves talk. So this right here is the exact opposite of what a Gen Y or millennial is looking for. So that's it. I think this panel will definitely help you. I suggest maybe even just printing it out if you can to keep it as a point of reference. You could have an employee on your staff right now, someone who could help you grow your business tenfold, somebody who can help you build the business that you've been dreaming about. Harness their energy, harness their enthusiasm, and get the very best from them. And the only way to do that, the only way to do it effectively, is to understand what motivates them, how they learn, and how they communicate. Once you do that, once you make an effort to learn about them, it'll certainly pay off. This is Lou Reyes with Over 50 TV. Have a great day, everybody.